All right, with this review, the second part of your test, which will be on Friday, is the null graphing calculator part of it. And you have to do some things like find the distance between points, the midpoint, find some coordinates that satisfy a condition, write some equations for circles, and maybe even draw the graph of it, find the center and radius of a circle, and find some equations with lines if you need to be parallel and perpendicular, and also label some parts of a quadratic function. And so let's look at some of the examples here on these review pages. So this first one says find the distance between the 2 points. So from the distance formula, you would have the distance equals the square root of the x value squared, which would be 6 minus negative 5 squared. And you would add a negative 2 minus 4 squared. And so that is 11 squared and 6 squared, negative 6 squared. And that would be 121 plus 36. So the distance would equal the square root of 157. And if you can simplify that, you should try to. Otherwise, you can leave it as the square root of 157. In our second example here, now we have a value for a. And so we're going to come up with an expression for our answer and not an actual number. So here we would have the distance equals the square root of 3 minus a squared plus a minus 5 squared, which is actually a plus 5 because it's minus a negative. And so then when you take 3 minus a and square it, you would get 9 minus 6a plus a squared, and then a squared plus 10a plus 25. And then simplifying that down to as much as little as possible, a and a squared would be 2a squared, negative 6a and positive 10a would be plus 4a, and 9 and 25 would be plus 34. And so then the distance would equal 2a squared plus 4a plus 34. Secondly, trying to find the midpoint. Remember, the midpoint is just the average. So 6 plus a negative 2 divided by 2, and a negative 8 plus a negative 10 divided by 2. And so 6 plus a negative 2 is 4, divided by 2 is 2, and a negative 8 and negative 10 is a negative 18 divided by 2 is a negative 9. And so the midpoint of those two coordinates would be a negative 9. And finding the coordinates that satisfy a condition would be a question like this, where for values of a is the distance between p and q less than 5. So we're trying to have the distance, so we need the distance formula. And so we would have a minus 3 squared plus 2 minus a squared has to be less than 5. And so then doing this would get you a squared minus 6a plus 9 plus 4 minus 4a plus a squared. Square root of that, still less than 5. Simplifying this would be 2a squared minus 10a plus 13. And then if you square both sides, you would get 2a squared minus 10a plus 26, which would be less than 25. No, it's not 26, it's 13 still. Because when you square something, it just takes the square root away. And so now, subtracting 25 from both sides, you would have 2a squared minus 10a minus 12 is less than 0. And then you can factor a 2 out of everything or divide both sides by 2. to get a squared minus 5a minus 6 is less than 0. Now here's what you use from chapter 2, and factor this to a minus 6, a plus 1, less than 0. And so in this case a equals 6, and in this case a equals negative 1. Then you would make your number line, put your values on it, negative 1 here, positive 6 there, and your factors a minus 6 and a plus 1, and then the result, and choose values. So you would start with, say, a negative 2, 0, and 7. So at a negative 2, this is going to be negative, this is going to be negative, which turns your result into a positive. At a 0, this is going to be negative, this is going to be positive, which makes your result negative. And at 7, you're going to have a positive and a positive, which makes your result positive. And since we're supposed to be less than 0, that would be this interval, which would be from a negative 1 to a positive 6. Would be your answer. And you should write it like that, or you can put it on a number line. Now then, writing equations of a circle given the center and radius. So, equation of a circle with a center at 7, negative 4, that means you would have x minus 7 squared plus y plus 4 squared, because it's always the opposite when you put it in with the variable. And then you have to find the distance between those 2 points, which the distance is going to be the square root of 7 minus 2 squared plus negative 4 minus 5 squared. And that's 25 and 81, which is the square root of 106. And so then when you write this, it's going to be 106, because your equation is x squared plus y squared equals r squared. And since r is the square root of 106, r squared is 106. All right, our second example here says write the equation of a circle with diameter endpoints at 8, negative 3, and 2, 5. So here, we're going to have to find the center first. And that center would be 8 plus 2 divided by 2, and a negative 3 plus 5 divided by 2, which is going to be 5 and 1. And so then we know that our equation has to be x minus 5 squared and y minus 1 squared. And now we have to find the radius, which, if we find the distance between the 2 points, just cut that in half. So we would have 8 minus 2 squared plus negative 3 minus 5 squared, and the square root of that. So this is 36 plus 25 which would be the square root of 61. We just made a mistake. this is not the square root of 61 because this is not 25. Negative 3 minus 5 is a negative 8, and negative 8 squared is 64. So here we have the square root of 100. And the square root of 100 is 10, but now that is the diameter. And so we need to find the radius, which is half of that, so it's 5, and 5 squared then would be placed there, or you could write 25. All right, moving on to the next one. Here, trying to find the center and the radius of the circle given this equation. Well, you have to get it in the proper form by first dividing both sides by 2. You'd have x squared plus y squared equals 24. And so then our center is 0, 0. And the radius is the square root of 24, which you can simplify to 2 square root of 6. In our second example, if we want to find the center and the radius, first you group the x terms and the y terms, and then move the number to the other side. It becomes a negative 60. And then you have to factor the 3 out. And now we have to try to complete the square of this, which would be x squared, which would be x plus 4 squared, still a 3 there, plus 3 times y minus 5 halves squared equals, and now you would have to multiply or add in order for that to happen. Here you have to add 16, which 3 times 16 is 48. And here 5 halves would be 25 fourths, and 3 times 25 fourths would be plus 75 over 4. And so then you would get negative 417 no, you would get 27 over 4. And then the last thing you would have to do is divide this all by 3 and multiply by 1/3 on this side. So then you would get x plus 4 squared plus y minus 5 halves squared, and that will equal 9 fourths. And so then our center is at a negative 4, positive 5 halves, and the radius is going to be the square root of 9 fourths, which the square root of 9 is 3, and the square root of 4 is 2. Now, one other way that you could have done this problem as you were going through here, when you got to this point right here, and you move that 60 to the other side, you could have divided the whole problem by 3 on both sides to get these to those, and then you would just have those gone, and this would have been 20 over here. Then when you completed the square of this, it would still be x plus 4 squared, and you would have just added a negative 20 plus 16, and then here it would be plus 25 over 4. And then that would have gotten you right to that value. And you wouldn't have had to do this dividing at the end. It doesn't matter when you do it. You can just do it either place. All right. Moving on to the next one, finding equations of lines given coordinates. So first you got to find the slope, which will be 8 minus 4 over 2 minus negative 3. So our slope is 4/5. And then you can pick a point, put it into the equation, and 8 equals 4/5 times 2 plus b. 2 times 4/5 is 8/5, and when you subtract 8/5, you will then get b is equal to 6 2/5. And so your final equation then would be y equals 4/5 x plus 6 2/5. Next one, finding a parallel line parallel to this line here, but passing through the point 8, negative 10. So that means the slope has to be the same, and then a negative 10 times 8 plus b. And 8 times 4/5 is 32/5, and so if we subtract 32/5 from both sides, you will get b is equal to a negative 82 over 5. And so then our equation would become y equals 4/5 x minus 82/5. And finally with this, finding a line that is perpendicular to the first line. There, remember, the slope has to be the opposite and the reciprocal. So a negative 5/4. And then using a negative 5/3, you would have 3 equals a negative 5/4 times a negative 5 plus b. And when you multiply there, you would have 25/4, which is positive. So then to move it to the other side, we have to subtract 25/4. And when you subtract 25/4 from 3, you will get a negative 13/4. And so our equation for this line would be y equals a negative 5/4 x minus 13/4. And finally, without the use of your calculator, your graphing calculator, you have to find all of these things. The line of symmetry for an equation, remember, is the opposite of b over 2 times a. And so then in this case, x would equal 8 over 2 times 1, which is 4. Finding the vertex then, we know the x value is 4. Substituting 4 into the equation would be 4 squared minus 8 times 4 plus 12. And that is 16 minus 32 is a negative 16 plus 12 is a negative 4. And so then this is the vertex. To find the roots, you would try to factor it. And are there factors of 12 that get you to a negative 8? They would be x minus 6 and x minus 2. And so in this case, the root is a positive 6. In that case, it is a positive 2. And then finally, is the vertex a minimum or a maximum? Well, because this value is x squared, it's a positive coefficient, so therefore our parabola is going to open up, and that makes it a minimum. And that concludes everything from the second part of the test, which will be on Friday.